Hello. So my children are home again. They had a really nice time at their grandparents and I had a really nice time at home, but I've been glad to have them back again. And I asked them if they would help me share 3 Scrabble games that we really enjoy playing together. And they don't really like making videos anymore, but they were keen to help me. So we're going to show you 3 different games you can play with the little Scrabble tiles. And they can be for kids or for adults. I really enjoy playing them. And the kids enjoy playing them too. And they're actually really good for learning to spell and read and that type of thing. And I'm going to share a recipe, which is what I'm having for morning tea. It is called an Oat Slice, and it is a really nice recipe. It's really yum, and it is frugal in that you can use whatever you have. You don't have to stick to set ingredients. And it is really easy and simple, and it is also reasonably healthy as well. I'm going to talk about using the slow cooker. I'm going to give a tip for a Bible reading and some thoughts about discouragement. On my mum's blog, I shared about getting discouraged and how we can keep from getting discouraged. So I'm going to share that again in case you haven't read that, but I'm also going to talk about why we get discouraged and about one specific reason why we get discouraged, because it's something that I've been thinking about and being challenged about this week. Oh, and also I realized that a few weeks ago I shared a recipe, the toad in the hole, which is a meal that my children really enjoy. I videoed it, but I actually forgot to write out the recipe and link it on my blog. So today I will do that, and I will link it back on that video as well. Okay, so the first game we're going to show you how to play is called Take. And so everybody has 7 Scrabble tiles, or whatever you call them, and you turn them over, and you have to try to make words that can all join up. So we'll see what Esther and Joseph can do. And once you have joined all yours together in words, then you say take, and everybody gets to take 2 more. And then you keep adding on more words.
Tabs.
I've done mine, so you can take. Joseph's using Dutch words as well.
I still can't do anything now.
So the end of the game is when all the tiles have been used up, and the winner is the one who finishes off first. Okay, so this game, everybody takes turns, and they take turns turning them over, but before you turn it over you have to say a category. So you could say boy's name, girl's name, animal, a last name, a place name, kind of something you wear or a clothing, and the first person to call something out gets to keep the tile. And then it's the next person's turn, and at the end the person with the most tiles that they get to keep is the winner. Okay, Esther, you start.
The girl's name. Cynthia. I don't know how to say it.
Starting with X. Okay. Joseph, your turn.
Boy's name. Ethan. I just forgot how to say it.
Okay, animal.
Koala. No.
Cat.
Koala is one. Oh, okay.
Okay, your turn.
Last name. Echo. Hi, Mummy didn't have to. Yeah, she's an animal.
Okay, your turn.
A transport.
Train.
Oh.
Okay, something that is hot. Or can be hot.
X.
Apple pie.
Country. Africa. You got that.
Africa's a continent. What did you say?
Africa. And
America's a continent too.
I don't know there's a continent. What's a country and what's a
Well, Africa is a big continent with lots of countries in it.
Australia.
Australia, yeah.
A breakfast. So we're saying you can have breakfast. Yes. Green eggs and ham. And geese.
You ate geese for breakfast. Oh, what did I do different one? Oh, I know, granola. It's like muesli. Okay, boy's name. Let's write it up.
One. Pet. No, just kidding. Peter.
Peter, yeah.
What?
Is it owl? Owl.
Okay, so this game we just call a hole in the middle. I don't know what the actual name is, but you have all the tiles like this, and you have a hole in the middle, and everybody starts turning over tiles. And if you see a word with the letters that are turned over, you call out the word, and you get to keep that word. Okay, so let's start playing.
And it's a turkey.
New.
Get
What's that? Oh, just
Okay. And pa.
Yep. So another rule is that if somebody has a word and you see a letter in the middle that you can join onto that word, you are allowed to call that word out and keep their word. So Joseph has pa. So if there was a T, I could say Pat, and I would get to keep his word. Okay, go.
C.
Oh yeah?
Find here.
Oh, did I say the winner at the end is the person with the most words that they still have?
N. B. Of. B. Excuse me, it's a word.
Hey Joseph, put R on your of and you'll have 4. F-O-R.
Sure? No. Sour. Oh, if it says no sour. I lost time. Can I count yours one? 10.
So here's a winner.
Is that?
Well done, yes.
So the oat slice, it is frugal in that 2 cups of the ingredients is an assortment of dried fruits, seeds, nuts, and chocolate. So you can make it all different ways. So one time I had white chocolate chips and I had raisins, and they were the only those kind of things that I have. And so I did 1 cup of white chocolate chips and 1 cup of raisins, and it turned out really nice. Yeah, there's just all different ways you can make it using that. And it is easy and simple. It has no icing. I do margarine so that I don't even have to soften the butter. So you pretty much just mix it all together, cook it, and it's done. And it's also reasonably healthy in that it has like coconut rolled oats, and then you can put seeds and nuts and dried fruit in it, so it's quite filling, and it is really yummy as well. I really like it. You can cut them up a little bit like muesli bars, or you can just eat it as a piece of cake or a slice.
I'm going to put in white chocolate chips, cranberries, sesame seeds, and sunflower seeds in there.
So one thing I did while the children were away that I don't usually do is I went to the library and I got out a few books. I just got out cookbooks, but one of them is on the slow cooker. I would like to use the slow cooker more. So I don't really use it that often. But anyway, I've only tried one thing out of this cookbook so far, and that is doing porridge, overnight porridge. So I've done this a few times already and it's turned out really good. The only problem I have is that because you don't stir it overnight, it gets a little bit of a crust on top. So I still need to figure out if there's a way you can prevent that. So I use 2 cups of rolled oats, 3 cups of water, 2 cups of milk, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a sprinkle of cinnamon, and a bit of salt as well. And one time I made it, I put in some, oh no, I did it in the morning. I put in some applesauce, but I put that in when it was already cooked. And then you cook it on low for 6 to 8 hours. So I usually turn it on right before I go to bed and then turn it off when I get up because I sleep about 8 hours. So that's one thing I've tried that turned out well, and it's quite nice because when I get up in the morning it's already ready. I don't have to make it, especially with the children at school because I usually get their lunch boxes ready in the morning. And also for Lydia, I can straight away dish some up so it can cool down. So it's all ready when it's time to eat. Oh, and yesterday we had curry for dinner, so I tried making curry the way I'd usually do it, but sticking it in the slow cooker. So I put everything in the slow cooker except I fried the onions and the garlic first and then put it all in, and it turned out pretty good. So it makes it a little bit less stressful at dinner if it's already ready. So when my kids are home from school, then I don't have to spend so much time preparing dinner. And I have a tip for Bible reading. Me and Johan listened to a sermon a while back, and I can't remember what the title was, so I can't link it because I'm not sure what the exact sermon was. But one of the tips that the preacher gave was when you are reading your Bible to write out verses. He reckons that it makes you slow down, because when we read the Bible we can read it really quick, especially if we are a fast reader, and that we can often miss things and we don't always take it all in or process it all. So he reckons that if you write out Bible verses, that can help you take it in more and think about it more and help you not skip over things. So although I do that to a certain point, I have my journal here, which usually I write down specific things that kind of speak to me or I want to remember. But I have got another notebook, so I have tried more just to write down verses even if they don't have any special meaning to me, and it just helps you to take it in more and to get more inside of you and to think about it more. So I think that is a really good tip, to write down Bible verses. And the preacher reckoned that, like say with the book of Romans, you could write down, say 5 verses a day, and in 3 months time you'd get through the whole book of Romans. But for me that sounds really overwhelming to do the same book for 3 months. I would rather kind of write a few verses here or just write a chapter or something like that. Otherwise I don't stick to things when they're more long term like that. And some thoughts about discouragement. I get discouraged very easily, and the other day we were at a rest home and we sang the song What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and one of the lines says we should never be discouraged, and that really spoke to me because I do often get discouraged, and I get discouraged very easily. So I have been thinking about why do we get discouraged, and these are some reasons I've come up with, which hopefully they apply to you as well. So I reckon one reason is when we don't get the results we want. If we don't get the results we want, we can get very discouraged. Number 2 is we look how big our problems are instead of how big our God is. So David could have got very discouraged if he was focused on how big Goliath was, but instead he was focused on how big God is. Number 3, we're not believing and trusting God's promises. There are many promises in the Bible that all things work together for good, or let us not grow weary in well doing, for in due season we will reap if we faint not. And there are promises about prayer. If we call unto him, he will answer us and show us great and mighty things. And if we're not focusing on those promises, we can easily get discouraged. Number 4 is we're doing things for people, not for God. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. But number 5 is we can't see an answer, or we can't see any result. So maybe we're working on our children, like teaching them, and we don't see that they're starting to learn. and we can get really discouraged, or we can be praying for something and we don't see any answer, and then we can get really discouraged. Number 6 is we're not taking out every discouragement to God in prayer. So instead of praying about these things, we are thinking too much about them and worrying about them, or just focusing on them rather than giving them to God and praying about them. So number 4 was we're doing things for people and not God. I know that when I do things for people instead of for God, I can easily get discouraged. I heard a preacher say how he wanted to be a missionary to Africa because he felt so sorry for the people over there who didn't know the gospel, didn't know about Jesus. And so he went as a missionary over there because he felt so sorry for them. But when he got there, he realized they already knew the gospel and they didn't want to hear it. And that made him really angry. But then he realized that he was there because God wanted him there, not just because he felt sorry for the people. You know, if he was only there because he felt sorry for the people, he probably would have come straight back again when he realized they didn't want to hear it. But because he was there for God, he was able to stay and keep doing what God wanted him to do. And I'm sure at some point people did start listening to him. I think in the Bible, Moses is an example. He cared about the Israelites, but the reason he brought them out of Egypt was because God told him to. If he'd only done it for the Israelites, like, when he got them out, and when they had hard times, when they had no water, no food, all the Israelites turn on Moses and say, it's all your fault, why did you bring us out? And so if he'd only done it for the people, he would have, left them, or he would have given up. But because he was doing it for God, then he didn't give up even when they blamed him. Another example is with Joseph. So when Potiphar's wife tempted him and wanted him to commit adultery with her, part of the reason that he didn't could have been his love for Potiphar. If you love somebody, you don't go stealing their wife. But if he'd only done it for Potiphar and not for God, because he said, how could I do this against God? How could I sin against God? If he'd only done it for Potiphar, what did Potiphar do when he heard his wife's story? He threw Joseph into prison. And so that could have been really discouraging for Joseph if he had just done it for Potiphar, because then Potiphar throws him in prison because he believes his wife instead of Joseph. But he was doing it for God. And so if we're doing things for God, then we won't get discouraged so easily. And if you just think of Jesus, if he had just come to earth because he felt so sorry for people, what did people do to him? They hung him on a cross, and people hated him. But he did it for more than just for us, more than just for people. He did it for his Father in heaven. And he often talks about doing the work that his Father gave him to do. And Mary is another example when she poured out the expensive ointment on Jesus. If she'd have been just doing it to get people's approval or to be an example to others, what did they say? Oh, what a waste. You're so silly. You've just wasted all that. You could have given it to the poor. And yet Jesus didn't growl her. Jesus stood up for her. She was doing it because she loved Jesus, not for the people that were watching. And if you think of Jim Elliot and Nate Saint, those 5 missionaries, they went to the Auca Indians partly because they cared about the people, but more importantly, they did it for God. And what did the Auca Indians do? They killed them. And yet they hadn't failed because they had done what God wanted them to do. And I think it's really important, like I say, with sharing the gospel. We may share the gospel with people because we care about them, and while we should partly do it because we care about them, our ultimate reason should be out of obedience to God because we love God. Because, people don't always want to hear the gospel. They might turn against us. Or maybe we warn somebody who's going the wrong way. If we only do it for them, we're going to get annoyed when they don't want to listen to us. And I know sometimes, like if I do things for Johan or I do things for the children, and if they don't appreciate it, you can get really angry. I know one time for Johan when we were first married, and I made him a Dutch meal. I went to the extra effort of making a Dutch meal for him, but he was still transitioning from being a bachelor to being a husband. And at work, they had dinner at work. And he sent me a message, but it was at dinner time, saying, oh, I'm staying at work for dinner. And my love for him suddenly turned to anger because I'd made this nice dinner and he didn't come home for it, which he never did that again. He was just kind of didn't think to tell me earlier that he was going to stay for dinner. But when we do things only for people, we can easily get our love can easily turn to bitterness and anger because we're doing it for the wrong reasons. We're just doing it for them rather than doing it for God. If we do it for God, then we won't get discouraged so easily, because if we do it out of the right heart, out of love for God, then He will be pleased for us. He will be pleased with us. Okay, but it's the thoughts that I shared in my blog about how to stay encouraged. First one is to remember all God's done for us in the past and to be thankful. Often we're so focused on right now and our problems or whatever it is that we're discouraged about right now, we forget all the times God has helped us in the past. And if He's helped us in the past, then He will help us again now and in the future. We need to remember to be thankful for all that He has done for us already. Number 2 is to remember that God is limitless. Nothing is too hard for Him at all. No problem is hard or too big for God. Number 3 is to focus on God and on His promises. We need to think more about God's promises rather than on our situation or on our problems. Number 4 is to trust God's wisdom, His timing, and His love for us. Sometimes we do need to wait, and we need to trust God's wisdom on that. And we need to trust His love for us. And number 5 is to pray about everything that discourages you. And number 6 is like what I said, do things for God and not for people. And Colossians chapter 3 verse 23 says, and whatsoever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. If we do things for God, then we have no reason to be discouraged, even if we don't get the results that we want.
We are lucky to have school grounds right over the road from our house. Johan's taken Hannah and Joe out, so it's a beautiful day, and me, Esther and Lydia have come over to the school.
Hello.
Hello?
Is this?
Can you do it?
Yeah.
Yay!